Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Rose Reads. Sorry for the 3 minute delay there. There were some technical difficulties with browsers. I guess everybody's online looking at the news and being alternately horrified and hopefully given a little hope. Anyway, I'm Rose Solari. I'm a poet, fiction writer, teacher, and co founder with James J. Patterson of Allen Squire Publishing. I started this little series of live streams on April 1st in response to the COVID-19 virus, hoping that um, I would be able to still communicate with folks about books and readings and so on. Um, Today's show, though, if you've been with me here before, is going to be a little different. You may be accustomed to me explicating the things I read, talking about them a little bit, explaining what I find beautiful in them. But today's show is not for that. Um, Today's show is entitled Black Lives Matter, Black Poetry Matters. And for the next half hour, I'm simply going to read to you 11 great poems by Black writers. I don't think it's the time for explication. All these magnificent poems stand on their own. With the poets that I personally know, I reached out to them and asked them if they'd like to pick a poem, and many of them did. And I'll let you know as I go along the way who picked their poems. I'm so grateful to all the poets involved in these shows. This show, only one has left us. That's Lucille Clifton, whose poem I'm going to begin with. But other than that, I'm not going to talk between poems. I'll say the poet's name at the beginning and the end so that you can remember them, look them up, find their work. Um, and I'll just say before I start that I think for many of us, poetry is a form of prayer. And I'm intending this show as a prayer for justice, for redress, for leaders who actually care about Black America. And so, with that, I will start. Thanks for joining me. This first poem is by the late, great Lucille Clifton, and it's called Won't You Celebrate with Me? Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. That was Lucille Clifton. This poem is by Cornelius Eady and it's called Sherbet. The problem here is that this sort of thing isn't pretty, the kind that can easily be dealt with words. After all, it's a horror story to sit, a Black man with a white wife in the middle of a hot Sunday afternoon in the Jefferson Hotel in Richmond, Virginia, and wait like a criminal for service from a young white waitress who has decided that this looks like something she doesn't want to be a part of. What poetry could describe the perfect angle of this woman's back as she walks just so, mapping the room off like the end of a border dispute? Which metaphor could turn the room more perfectly into a group of islands? And when the manager finally arrives, what language do I use to translate the nervous eye motions, the yawning afternoon silence, the prayer beneath his simple inquiries, the sherbet which he then brings to the table personally, just to be certain the doubt stays on our side of the fence? What do we call the rich, sweet taste of frozen oranges in this context? What do we call a weight that doesn't fingerprint, won't shift, and can't implode? That was Cornelius Eady. This poem is called Myth, and it is by Natasha Tretheway. I was asleep while you were dying. It's as if you slipped through some rift, a hollow I make between my slumber and my waking. The Erebus I keep you in, still trying not to let go. You'll be dead again tomorrow, but in dreams you live. So I try taking you back into morning. Sleep heavy, turning, my eyes open. I find you do not follow. Again and again, this constant breaking. Again and again, this constant forsaking. My eyes opened, I find you do not follow. You, back into morning, sleep heavy, turning. But in dreams you live. So I try taking, not to let go. You'll be dead again tomorrow. The Erebus I keep you in, still, trying. I make between my slumber and my waking. It's as if you slipped through some rift, a hollow. I was asleep while you were dying. That was Myth by Natasha Tretheway. Reuben Jackson selected this poem for me to read today. Some of you may have seen it online. Or in the Boston Review. It's called Kelly Recalls 1963. I still call the year 1963 season of nightmares. After Medgar Evers was killed, I would lie awake and wait for my Uncle Joe to get home safely. He and my Aunt Blanche had the same carport Mr. Evers had. I know because I read the story concerning his assassination over and over in Ebony magazine. Even when he, my uncle, was safely seated on the couch, I could not sleep because I now knew that we were hated for being who we were and are. Then the 4 little girls in Birmingham died in that bombing. Who will protect us? I asked the moon on more than one sleepless night. That was Reuben Jackson. This is a poem by Teri Cross Davis. She picked this for me to read today. It's called Crescendo. My son nests, pawing each pillow like a breast fleshed out and so newly forgotten. I've spanked him once tonight. He takes turns laughing, then crying, defiant, then hungry. In his mouth, my name, all need. Pursed lips plead, Mommy, and I am guilty of the same sin. I miss his curled and tucked weight, embryo, the deepest root yanked clean. This is why babies are born crying into this world, having held fast to such an intimate tether. Who willingly would let go again? But today another white cop walked free. Another black body was still on the ground, not indicted, undoubtedly the future outcome. 4 years ago, I crossed labor's red sea of pain to birth a boy. No doctor hit his backside. Now I raise my hand to complete an act older than me, breaking the black back of the boy to make a man who can survive in America. Mommy, he calls me, and my teats threaten to weep old milk at our stasis. Both of us needing the succor of sleep, both of us fighting, him to keep me near, me punishing him to be left alone. He crawls into my lap. His heart is 3, his body a lanky 4. I cover him with a blanket too thin to mean it. We rock back on the edge of the bed, listening to the symphony's 4th movement, the crescendo, sweet, full of tension, violin strings singing. I think Mozart must have known something of loving with such a tender fear that it breaks you open like a welt that bleeds to heal. Tonight, I give up, cuddling this boy so full of belief in himself. I'm too tired with love to beat it out of him. That was Teri Cross Davis. This poem is by Brian Gilmore. He picked it for me, and it's called Oh Canada. He cuts my grass, detests the black president. This is the first thing he shares, then says he's from Canada, where Gretzky was born. You know Gretzky? He and I have been in Michigan for the same amount of time, lost a parent, broke a heart, had ours broken. He is curious that I teach law and know a few things. Shouldn't I be mowing lawns or laying cement? A black man like me in a suit more scarce in these parts than crawfish. I don't tell him I have seen him dancing butterball naked on social media. I treat him with respect. This mollifies him, though it is simple. 10 toes, 10 fingers, nose, mouth, pain, hearts, pumping blood, loves. But he still speaks always unkindly of the black president, assumes I will get angry like a child denied a toy, but I don't. His wife is dying. My big bro's wife has the same disease. This is where we meet most days. It is our balm and burden. We compare stories. When I see him, I just remain quiet, nod my head. He invites me to church. I don't go, though my imagination surges. People holding snakes, the most segregated hour in America, it's been called. Last time I see him, he's happy. His wife is alive, but they have split up. He doesn't cut lawns. He's wearing a suit. I attended church last week, not his. I'm the only color in the room, but there are no snakes. I stand and sing hymns, pray, feel like I am on Pluto watching a hockey game. But no one there says anything bad about the black president. And there's a sign on their lawn, Black Lives Matter. That was Brian Gilmore. This is a poem I received from E. Ethelbert Miller. He picked this for today, and it's called, Is This the History of Air? I can't breathe, he said, but there was no air. Only the absence of trees and rope. The swaying of history over another black body. That was E. Ethelbert Miller. This poem is by Saida Augustini, and it's called Brescia Meadows Speaks on Divinity. The footnote, which you may not need, says Brescia Meadows is a 14-year-old black girl convicted of killing her abusive father in self-defense. God is a black girl who once had to kill her own father. Say the social workers listened with kind white eyes as she wept, her bare skin a constellation of ripening bruises. Say God shuddered on walks home, ran away 13 times before she was 13, sat in light, airless rooms, hustled up in sleep clothes and stank breath, repeated her rosary. He beats us, he beats us, he beats us, he beats, he beats, he beats. Now the counselors shook their heads, asked questions like, does he hit you with an open or closed hand? Buttoned their good woolen coats in the blind Ohio winter and took her back home When God comes to school, wailing, breaking chairs, screaming, "He will kill me," a chorus of white women hover around her, confused, lovely angels, pronouncing her name a supplication. God cut herself to remember or forget how history changes. "He will kill me," to "Are you sure?" How she dreamt at night of trees and running, her mother's head cleft into galaxies of blood, her father's hands thick, dark, laughing rocks, carving their flesh again and again, her mother begging her not to tell, saying, "He will kill me," and God can't stop, imagining the sweet jump of a trigger. God cried over her father, sleeping gun in hand, how the bullets exited the chamber, how he died saying her name, God bloody and keening on the floor, her mother screaming, a break knitted into the end of a heartbeat, God's arms around her father. God is a black girl in love with living, a sacrament on how to be disbelieved, forgotten, and rise 1,000 times, over and over and over again. That poem was by Saida Agostini. This poem is by Hayes Davis. He picked this. I'm very grateful to him and all the poets who picked poems for today. And this is called Urgent Care. The skeletal image of my son's hand fascinates me. The ghostly white and gray digits usually seen on costumes, movie screens, Day of the Dead memorials, are only gentle tapering and widening. Rounded ends and imagined cartilage. No muscle and, it dawns on me, no skin. He is stripped literally to the bone, race replaced by the strict fact of phalanx, carpals, metacarpals. For 4 minutes during the doctor's diagnosis and the brief quiet before we leave this private room, he is only a boy, only limited by metal splint with blue padding, the doctor's orders to play gently. That was Hayes Davis. This poem is by Robin Coste Lewis. It's called Math. And then, at some point, as you step more vigilantly into the middle of your life, you begin to realize that they are all dead. Or more honestly, it takes even more years. You begin to realize that perhaps they are not all supposed to be dead. Or you still remember. You can still feel yourself there, standing knee deep in cement, a particular square on the sidewalk. There were dandelions, that odd eternal sun. When a dear friend, your sister's best friend, drives by, stops her car in the middle of the street, and then tells you, screams out of her car window and says, it is your first beloved, that boy for whom you were slowly unfolding yourself from inside outward, that boy whom you had yet to kiss but would one day soon kiss, certainly, that monumental boy who smiled at you differently, that boy had just been shot and killed by strangers, just for fun. You are 14, and it is the beginning. It is the very first day when the world confirms that new gleam of suspicion layered on the surface of the dark violet lake inside, that yes, slaughter is normal. Slowly, over the years, you train yourself not to want this. You, a body in your bed with whom you can have a real conversation, a body with whom you can walk anywhere, talk anywhere, hear anywhere. At some point, you gave up expecting to be understood. English was too many red languages at once, and history was just a very small one, a ledger, and always in the black. You took out your sheerest sword, your tongue a sheath of arrows. Perhaps not by coincidence, once you began to trip around 50's maypole, you and your sister find together the courage to do the math. Of all the boys whom you had known as children, at least 80% were all either missing, in jail, or dead. Blood on the streets, bullets in the walls, the police always flying overhead, in your head. You thought it normal. When boys disappeared, were shot, killed, cuffed, or thrown onto a black and white hood for simply walking down the sidewalk or asking merely, "What have I done?" Normal. As expected as the orange poppies, your quiet state flower, blossoming on the side of the streets year round. And then, finally, you and I, our bodies, together for a few hours. Time loves me. Every minute a gift so tender, each second announces itself. And then, just as quickly, equally, every second is stolen, erased, washed away. You. I understand somehow it will be another 4 years until I see you again. We walk through the night, arm in arm, across the wet sidewalk, and besides my son, I am the happiest I have ever been with another human being. But it is a silence, a happiness that rare, unexpected, quiet, and I wait and wait, and no one shoots you afterwards. Or maybe this night was God's way of saying to me, finally, yes, I do realize you exist. And this one night, just this one night, is all the complete happiness you can ever expect from me. That was Robin Coste Lewis. This poem is called American Smooth, and it's by Rita Dove. We were dancing. It must have been a foxtrot or a waltz, something romantic but requiring restraint, rise and fall, precise execution as we moved into the next song without stopping, two chests heaving above a 7-league stride. Such perfect agony one learns to smile through. Ecstatic mimicry being the sine qua non of American smooth. And because I was distracted by the effort of keeping my frame, the leftward lean, head turned just enough to gaze out past your ear, and always smiling, smiling, I didn't notice how still you'd become until we had done it. For 2 measures, 4, achieved flight, that swift and serene magnificence before the earth remembered who we were and brought us down. That was Rita Dove. This poem is by Jericho Brown. It's called Duplex. I begin with love. I begin with love, hoping to end there. I don't want to leave a messy corpse. I don't want to leave a messy corpse full of medicines that turn in the sun. Some of my medicines turn in the sun. Some of us don't need hell to be good. Those who need least need hell to be good. What are the symptoms of your sickness? Here is one symptom of my sickness. Men who love me are men who miss me. Men who leave me are men who miss me in the dream where I am an island. In the dream where I am an island, I grow green with hope. I'd like to end there. That was Jericho Brown. Thank you all. I'd like to end there on hope myself. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to all the poets who responded to my request to pick a poem of theirs for me to share today. I'm sure they would have told me if they thought that this was overstepping on my part. I hope they didn't. Let us all continue to love each other and to work for justice, for redress, for leaders who care about Black Americans, about Black lives. Jimmy Patterson will be back here on Monday from the reading room. He's going to do some philosophy himself that relates to this particular time in our lives. I'll be back next Wednesday. Stay safe. I love you all. Thank you for your poetry. Thanks for showing up. Bye for now.